at that point in your career, you kind of moved, I'm going to say, further into that kind of world of commerciality, business. I saw there was roles Capital Systems, F10, Fidessa, Bloomberg, and then Thomson Reuters as Director of Global Partnerships. There's some incredible companies, incredible roles. What was kind of going on for you personally through your career at that kind of stage?
I think my career really took off then.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a few different reasons for that. So I've always been driven by curiosity and fascination with tech. And the move into Progress Software with Apama was my first move into capital markets, where I've roughly been ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the thing that drove that, believe it or not, was I saw a trading terminal and went, that looks amazing. Like, so much going on there. I just want to work on something like that. So I tried my hardest to get into it, which was first Apama, which was algorithmic trading.
Yep.
And then I tried really hard. Fidessa at the time was all the tier one institutional banks used Fidessa. And I just wanted to work for Fidessa.
Yep.
So it was seriously a badge of honor. And so I tried hard to get into Fidessa.
Yeah.
I found people, I wrote unsolicited applications, and in the end I finally got in there. And so that whole capital markets trajectory, that played out over about 10 years, up until probably the peak of it, which was Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And, that was all following the same theme.
Yeah, great. So in those roles, I think for Fidessa, you were head of business development and, say, director of product side with Bloomberg as well. How much were you still getting to tinker with the tech, and how much were you in more of a kind of commercial sales aspect with clients?
Still a lot with the tech. I think the thing about trading in particular is that when you work for a company like Fidessa, you're trading 150 global markets.
Yeah.
They all require connectivity. They all have local regulations. They all have technology requirements of where data is and isn't kept. So you do need to have a solid technical grounding for putting things together for that. And business development, I think this is where job titles become really confusing. Like business development, some people have an impression of what that is. That at Fidessa, it was basically doing really deep studies with clients to say, I want to replace my global equity system. It has 300 users, it trades every global market. How am I going to do that? And you would go in there and do a study, you'd break it down into, well, that's the functionality you need, that's the people we need. And we would pull it into a software as a service arrangement.
Okay.
And then I'd need to cost that. So then we could give it back to sales and go, if you want to win Citi's global equity business, you will need to charge at least this amount of money. So business development in that context was very much, how do we pick up really big, complicated systems and turn them into a service?
Yeah, okay.
So you do need to be pretty technical, I think, to pull some of that off.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd imagine with that, the cost of that sale is enormous as well.
Yeah.
Right. As in the probably the life cycle and journey to get to the point of somebody signing a contract. It's a lot of
1 to 2 years sometimes.
I was going to say, that's a long cycle. If you were to think about then that time, and you were kind of to crystallize it in terms of your takeaway experiences that have kind of shaped you to kind of push on then in back into a world of tech in your career, how would you define it?
This may sound a little bit obtuse, I guess, but I think Fidessa was an incredible company for software quality.
Yeah.
Like we used to have jokes about the software. Like it was so solid that you could, fire bullets into the server and it would keep running. Right. Or that when it did die, it would die like a Hollywood death. You'd know like for 5 minutes that it was going to die. Yeah. So it was fantastically engineered. The head engineers in that company went on to work for Google and other really big names. They were fantastic. So I got to work with some of these high quality engineers. I'd say what I'd take away from it is single technology bases are really good to work with because they're predictable and you understand how to work with them. The more heterogeneous your technology base gets, the harder it is to operate and the less easy it is to develop things like SLAs and RTOs because it's a bit of a dog's breakfast.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's one technology base, we had this journaling system that ran everything. It was bespoke and it worked. And we always knew no matter what thing we were working on, it would work predictably the same way. And I guess the other thing I took away from Fidessa is not everything that isn't agile is bad. Fidessa was waterfall.
Yeah.
There was some annoying things about waterfall. You would write these service definitions that were like this thick, to get something delivered. So there was a lot of upfront rigor required, but every time it came out of the factory, it would be rock solid. It would be on spec and it would never fall over.
That's
You know,
interesting.
and I would feel quite confident walking in to see a client because I wasn't going to get beaten up about all the times the software has fallen over.
Yeah.
You know, what they might say is, okay, you took a bit longer to deliver it than I thought you would. It's like, okay, yeah, but you got exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, so it's not. This is why I'm very much a fan of hybrid style delivery patterns, because I don't think that incremental delivery on an agile style basis works for everything. When you're doing big, complicated global systems, sometimes waterfall works too.
Yeah.
And particularly when you've got a lot of synchronization to do across a lot of different moving parts. So I think that's the main takeaways from Fidessa. A very, very well engineered company.
Yeah, okay. So just on that last point, what they call it, Wagile? You're
Yeah.
an advocate for Wagile.
I am,
Yeah.
yes.
Through that time as well, I guess what I'm interested from a career management perspective, how kind of proactive were you in looking for those changes, or did the changes come to you? How did they, because you look at your profile, it is incredible, and you strike me as a very humble person, so I'm sure you're not going to sit there and admit to that, but it is, and I'm just interested though how you kind of transition between those roles.
It was all very much driven out of interest. To be honest, I've got this downside, I suppose, to my personality, which is I'm easily bored.
Right.
You know, what actually happens is I stick at something for a while and then I see something shiny over somewhere else and I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think my career management, I would honestly say, is more like I'm interested, so I would pursue it. Yeah. Like I got into high frequency trading just because I wanted to work on tech that was sub 5 microseconds.
Right.
Like that sounded fascinating.
Yeah.
So I got into high frequency trading. And, you know, then from there, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done with working on trading. I want to work on something more over the counter or something more data driven. So I went to Bloomberg. Yeah. I mean, a lot of I haven't ever, you know, I think it's a combination of good quality companies and good positions. I've never taken a step backwards where I think it's an illogical move. It's just been quite parallel. Like, you know, I'm going to move over there because it's going to teach me something that I didn't know, but it's never really been backwards. It's always kind of been parallel.
Yeah, okay.
So working for great companies, great brands, good products, and kind of moving parallel.
I saw you you joined LiquidNet as head of product.
Yeah.
I guess my read when I was kind of looking through this, and maybe it was incorrect now on reflection, but it was more of a hybrid role in the sense that you kind of had the go-to-market strategy and the product development in that role.
That's right.
And maybe that was slightly different to other roles that you'd had, but I was just interested to understand how you balanced the two, the kind of internal product and the external customer.
It's an interesting one. I think it depends sometimes on the company how well defined their marketplace is. I think in the case of LiquidNet, you know, there was a legacy business there that did exactly what it said on the tin and everyone loved it. So from that point of view, you always had this balance of, okay, there's this thing here that everybody loves, don't break it. And then a bunch of new stuff that wasn't really taking off yet that you needed to get in front of clients.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if I've got a brilliant answer for that one. I think managing internal stakeholders and external stakeholders is just as important.
Yeah.
You know, you can't lose sight of the product you're building, but also the people internally know those clients very well and they've been servicing them for a long time.
Yeah.
One thing I did learn from LiquidNet that I've carried elsewhere is that they had an excellent back office operation. Like their connection to the client through the software was really, really good.
Yeah.
So they could see what clients were doing, and if a client would get themselves in trouble, they would reach out. Like they could pop up a chat and say, "Hey, I can see you're having trouble. Like, can I help you with something?"
Yeah, right.
Because they were trying to match trades, they were trying to match counterparties, and they'd say, "Well, I can't agree with this guy on a price." So they would get on the phone to the other guy and go, "I can see you're trying to make a deal," and they were really on point with the customer servicing.
That's interesting. You don't expect that from tech. You kind of expect the efficiency, but not maybe the intimacy.
Yeah, they really nailed it. And I bring that to other companies now, whereas if you can connect those two things, it's super powerful.
Yeah,
because all of the LiquidNet clients would be net promoters for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's not many companies, I don't think. Again, I don't have all the detail, the data on that, but I don't think there's many companies that nail that.
No. There's
they're leaning to one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. They tend to either focus on the customer side of things, or they, you know, maybe do some internal development of products, but they're not really connecting the two so well.
Through that time, you had some pretty significant leadership roles as well. I was just interested how you developed that aspect of your career. Did you have mentors, coaches? You know, who shaped you as a leader?
I think it was mostly mentors.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, I had lots of really good mentors, like I mentioned, over my career.
Yeah.
So, and I know exactly who they were and the point in time in which they taught me something.
Yeah.
And I can say, for example, when I was at Bloomberg, I had an excellent mentor. And I was having so much trouble with the head of engineering. Like we could just not agree on anything. And every time we got into a room, it would be like seconds before we'd have a conflict about something. And what she taught me was you can't approach them that way. You can't come in with an opinion. You've got to help them get to the answer you want them to get to by asking the right questions. And it changed my dynamic completely with that person, because I wouldn't walk in with a strong opinion going, I've got to make them agree.
Yeah.
I walk in and go, well, let's hear them out and try and get them to see my side, and then we'll end up in a good place. So that sort of mentorship, I think, is really powerful.
Do you still hear those kind of words of advice in your head today?
I do. Yeah, no, I really do. And I occasionally have to remind myself. Like if I am having something I'm having trouble getting through, I'll go back to something someone told me.
Yeah.
Like, come at it from a different angle, or use a different method.
Yeah.
So I think, it's mostly been mentors.
I kind of think of those moments as a bit like Luke Skywalker, when kind of Obi-Wan appears and gives him some advice from the past, or Yoda or something. It's kind of like that experience, right? You kind of learn from those people as you go through, and
you do.
You realise, hang on, here's a moment when I should apply this advice.
Yeah, people use this saying quite often. You don't choose jobs, you choose leaders, and I think that's important. If you're a young person and you want to develop your skills, leadership's important. I would say most of my success is down to probably those 5 or 6 people that I work for.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they taught me just so much. Yeah. And I've even got funny sayings about it, like the salesperson who taught me everything about how to deal with clients. I refer to them as an old salesperson once said, as an anecdote, whenever I tell somebody, because I'm kind of channeling that advice from years ago.
Yeah, that's great.